Welcome to Insurance Innovation Yesterday and Tomorrow from Istanbul Fintech. Welcome. We have Hüseyin Güler, Global Business Development and Innovation Director of Kastamonu Entegre. Hüseyin Güler. Welcome, Hüseyin. First of all, thank you so much for being with us at Istanbul Fintech. So we're going to talk about innovation in insurance. Lately, you have been doing leading work in innovation. How do you define innovation yourself? First of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I very closely and with much interest follow your work. Indeed, innovation has been quite high on the agenda in the last couple of years, and it's becoming increasingly important. I define it very simply, the concept of innovation. It is a novelty that creates value for us. We might have so many different novelties, but we can't call all of them innovation. The critical point is whether they can turn into value. But how do we define value? It could be a social value, or it could be commercial value. In the past, we only considered it from the perspective of commercial value, but social novelties can also be considered innovation. To call something innovation, you don't really have to rediscover the tire. You don't have to be inventive. But of course, there is inventive work. When you consider Elon Musk and Tesla, we see an R&D worth more than $1 billion. And when you see all the current values that we are with today, you see how Tesla has come further than much older automotive companies. It promises disruptive technologies. It's transformational. And when you consider the current landscape in the automotive industry, it can create disruptive effects. So it does have promises, but not only that, we cannot consider all innovation the same sphere. Consider yourself in the middle of Central Africa. You're living in bamboo houses and you don't have electricity. When you bring electricity to that house with solar panels, then that is innovation for that household. We have important innovations out of this country as well. I sometimes ask this question in some of the meetings that I go into. I ask the people, what's the most important innovation that came out of Turkey? Getir, for example, is discussed a lot these days, the Yemek Sepeti Trendyol. But do we have a manufacturing innovation? So when you think of the Turkish coffee makers, that is a production that's quite innovative. And about 16 companies manufacture these machines today. When I was in Brussels years ago, we received guests in the office, and I wanted to offer Turkish coffee to them. But you can't really talk with the guests and then use a pot to make the coffee. But now, with the single touch of a button, you can make Turkish coffee. So that is innovation as well. To put it in a nutshell, innovation can be fed with needs as well, but it can also be derived from technology. What matters is whether it creates new value or not. You might find yourself in an effort to make innovation, and that includes a motivation to create positive change. So that change needs to be in a positive direction. So we're talking about how that should turn into a win-win situation for both the user and for the developer. So that could be our introduction. Thank you so much. You mentioned coffee. That's quite important because we should maybe dedicate a whole other session to coffee. 10 years ago, I was not able to find the paper coffee filter bags in Turkey, but we're talking about like third-generation coffees right now, and Turkish coffee makers are very developed as well. So we have seen a transformation in that particular area, but there are other developments in other areas as well. But how does that reflect in the insurance industry when we think of finance transformation? So I'm completely outside of the picture in the insurance industry. Tell me about innovation in insurance. Well, first of all, I look at it this way. In today's world, we have to do a lot of work amid uncertainty. And how to define that? So we have risk factors involved, and we need to go further, do better. And to do that, we have to take risks that are reasonably calculated. You might fail, you might succeed. We have so many examples of that kind in our business world. So we have to have reasonably calculated risks that we take. And then we find ourselves in a path, the end of which we're not really very certain about. And you need company on that path. We need people to support us. Maybe we need to have a perspective through which we can share risk. This is a perspective from business world, but on an individual level, for example, we are becoming more sensitive with our house because we have more sophisticated appliances at home, we have a more sophisticated approach as a person. Before the pandemic, we traveled more, we were more mobile, and obviously mobility is everywhere. And the pandemic on its own means change. When we change or when we try to maintain the status quo, we need people to share the risks on that path forward. And this is how I look at the insurance industry. So, we go through these periods of vagueness where we can't make predictions clearly. We take risks reasonably or unconsciously, and in such cases, the industry of insurance brings reassurances to us. As far as I can follow what's going on in the Fintech industry, we see that there is a disruptive dimension as well. So, almost everything is depending on data in our lives. So our healthcare data, our social movements, our business. So everything is transformed into data, which also means that risks can be calculated with that. This is, on one hand, an opportunity for the industry of insurance, but on the other hand, it poses risks for conventional companies because it requires transformation. So when we think of the increase of mass media communication, when we become more accessible, more available, when our availability becomes higher, and when data guides the way for our lives, when data turns into a strategic tool, that comes with a need for the insurance industry to transform itself. Just going back to the answer that I gave you for the first question, we have to engage in positive change, and positive change brings innovation. So, I'm not sure if this has been quite comprehensible to you for someone outside of the business. Yes, absolutely. Why should we have transformation in insurance? You have really explained it quite well. And it's all about also adapting to where the world is leading to. When you go back a couple of decades ago, all business lines were independent and they would serve customers on their own. So like banks would grant loans and manufacturers of cars would sell cars and insurance people would sell insurance. But now all these business lines are becoming integrated. And insurance, amid this sphere of integration, has a certain static movement. It basically says they protect you, insurance protects you against future risks. But we discussed that with you a while ago. In Kastamonu Entegre, you have non-inflammable doors and waterproof floor tiles, and all of that, of course, should be linked to insurance, and there's a huge link. because we're talking about housing insurance, and that could really lead the way forward in that area. And we really don't know what these companies do, but insurance companies and these kind of manufacturers have the same clients. So I believe that the insurance industry should renew itself based on that sharing. You really read my mind, actually. Most probably I was going to talk about the same or similar things. Christen's has a theory about jobs. At houses, at the end of the day, obviously, we don't want that, but fire can break out at homes, and of course there are appliances and also furniture that we have that's non-inflammable. But the theory says to us, don't look at it as a product. The customer buys a certain product to carry out a task, and that should be the perspective that we have. So, for example, when we consider fire protection, the user or the consumer wants to be protected against fire. Most probably, they could be quite indifferent when it comes to differentiating between A and B in the market to buy a certain product. But what do we do as professionals? We would like to develop a certain product with our own perspective, but just like you've mentioned really well, when we are data-oriented, it means that industries that look completely unrelated are coming together with opportunities that are around. So we can create synergies that could be unthinkable a couple of decades ago, just like I've said. Rather than using conventional perspectives, we need to manifest more up-to-date perspectives. I think that's very meaningful, and I think jobs to be could be a very, very useful theory for us. All industries should be renewing themselves and redefining themselves, and I think this could be quite promising in that regard. Let me give you an example. Think of a manufacturer of a washing machine. What do? They produce washing machines, right? We're talking about something that was not there 100 years ago, but after the Second World War, washing machines started to be manufactured, and it makes life easier. So what do? You purchase the washing machine, it has a certain lifespan, you consume electricity, and then it turns into quite a bit of a task, quite a bit of a labor. But from jobs to be perspective, the main competitor of washing machine producers are not other washing machine producers. What do? We purchase a cleaning service. Our worry is not only about just using the detergent and then drying the clothes and doing all that laundry. But that cleaning service could be given to us without using all these extra instruments. If there are such initiatives out there, we users would change our habits, would shift our ways of doing things from A to B. So, we're going through a certain period. We have this opportunity to redefine the problems that we have. If you use a different perspective to define a problem, then with the integration of disruptive technologies, you have wonderful innovation. So, some industries die out, some industries have a chance to be born. So, if we want to adapt to the new world, new technologies, if we want to understand these kinds of trends better, then we should look into that Jobs to Be theory by Christen's. I'd like to also recommend the book by Clayton, Mastering an Innovation. That was how that was also published in Turkish. But the title in English is this: How to Compete Against Luck. So I think the Turkish translation was not literal, but I hope I have been able to express myself quite well. So in order to adapt to the new world order, you need new perspectives. And that requires different innovation techniques and adaptation to the places that we live in. So we're not talking about arbitration, arbitrary trials and errors. We're talking about a conscious effort to do innovation. So you mentioned jobs to be. You're talking about also the redefinition of needs. You mentioned Tesla. I guess everyone knows Uber, and that really is an example of how we redefine need. So, the whole service is about taking a person from A to B. So, people have private cars and there's public transportation, but now there's a third player. They have disrupted this transportation system, and that brought about an international discussion. So, are we going to see the emergence of a disruptive player in the insurance, or are we not going to see an example like Uber in the insurance industry? So, is it about a risk transfer? People say that maybe risk transfer will also change step by step. It will be integrated into different business models. So this is a question that is out there. And at the bottom of it lies the fact that there are two reasons why there isn't revolutionary work in industry of insurance. You might want to interpret that as well. So the structural characteristic of this industry is the reason why there is no revolutionary work. There is huge requirements for capital, and also there is a lot of regulation problem. And secondly, right now, there are major corporations that dominate the industry. They have huge HR, they have huge capital, and they have huge levels of turnover. And within that structure, they don't really want to rock the boat. They don't really want to change things dramatically. All sorts of innovative ideas and initiatives are considered from the perspective of, oh, what are we going to get out of it? And there could be short-term gains out of an initiative, and that is being compared against long-term gain. I have a question that I receive a lot, but I don't like it at all. The question is, at what price are you going to sell it? Well, I don't know. We're trying to do something, and it's going to end up somewhere. So this is really the innovation dilemma. This is the definition of innovation dilemma. And on the other hand, I'm thinking, okay, insurance is highly regulated. Yes, it requires huge amounts of capital. But at the same time, in other industries, this dilemma has been broken, has been eliminated. So from that perspective, what could be done to use innovation mechanisms in the industry? What should be at the forefront? Well, from the past up to now, when we consider the revolution of the internet and the computer, we have seen exponential growth, and that is gathering speed. So there are several dynamics out there. One of them is the fact that disruptive developments come from outside the industries, not from within. That's the general happening. And the era of inventors is behind us to a certain degree. So, for example, there is a book that talks about the internet and the digital age. Yes, internet has developed and we have a digital age, digital transformation. You can't point out to a single hero when it comes to these developments, because simultaneously or at different times in history, people work separately and these are built on top of each other. So that brings us to a need for collaboration. And this can be done with the players in the industry, but more valuably, actors from outside the industry should be part of those collaborations, and that becomes increasingly important if you also want to attach any meaning to disruptive technologies and development. So you can integrate information from outside your industry into your industry. And you also have to pay attention to weak signals. So, you mentioned the innovation dilemma. Yes, a technology can be disruptive, but it doesn't have to be high technology. What happens there? We have technologies, we have things that do a couple of things very, very well. We're not talking about super apps that do everything. We are talking about things that are highly specialized in just one or two areas. At first, their market penetration is low, but over time, they grow exponentially. And these are players from outside the industries. So, for example, biotech developers. Consider them. Özlem Türeci and Uğur Şahin. They were not really a part of the vaccine industry. There are other people that have been working in that area. But what happened was that these are people that thought out of the box. They could use multiple perspectives. And these kinds of structures are becoming more important. So, they can use the conventional business model, but at the same time, they can step out of the conventional structure and they can bring in the disruptive perspective. So these kinds of organizations are ambidextrous ones. They use both hands when they work. So we want to do innovation, but we don't want to waste the day. You don't want to waste today because, of course, if we have things that work, we should optimize that. We should increase efficiency in what works, and that's what we call exploitation. So you take one thing that works and you carry it to the next level, but at the same time, we need to have a mechanism within which we attach meaning to disruptive technologies. So we should develop what muscle we have, but we should also add new muscles. There are several speculations about that. So does that require a different unit, a different company? Should we use ambidextrous people within the same team? Should we employ these kinds of people? So should we dedicate optimization to certain people? Should we have other people working on exploration? So there are several perspectives out there. But obviously, any organization will have their own correct path and they have to discover it themselves. So this ambidextrous structure should be a part of strategies. This is what we need. So for example, I am working in a conventional industry. In the course of 7 years, we've had major developments. At the end of the day, every industry gets in touch with and engages with other industries, and that brings it to the next level. If you're lagging behind, you lose the game. It was the same in the past, but now it's getting even faster. So, I believe that we have to internalize the ambidextrous organization perspective. It should become a part of our strategies. That is something that I find very valuable. And when we think of exploitation, increasing the efficiency of what we have, optimizing what we have, companies have a lot of experience there. So, we should leave that job to others. And I'd like to talk about discovery-oriented perspective. In my opinion, there are a couple of things to do there. First of all, collecting insights. That is becoming incredibly important. We're talking about insights from the customers, we're talking about also technology insights. So you should closely follow user trends And we also are talking about non-customers. You should follow the trends of non-customers. Maybe we should follow them more. Yeah, exactly. Secondly, following technological trends. You should also make links between this and the other insights. And of course, we have certain instruments that we use that turn that data into a practical way. So, I'd like to use the word conscious. There are unconscious pieces of work as well. We see those examples. And thirdly, we should have corporate venture capital funds that are supposed to be in place. So these are the solutions that come up to my mind right now. You just mentioned how you don't like the question of at what price are you going to sell? And the answer is, I don't know. Yes. Build and then learn. So, if there's a problem that it has a narrow space, we should create the solution in the narrow space. We Turkish people would like to expand rather than deepen. Yes, we want to solve everything at the same time. No, that's not what we should do. Let's say we're facing a single problem. We have discovered a need. We should deepen into that. We should study it deeply, and then we should come up with a value proposition and test whether that value proposition works. If it works, then we should work on it. If it doesn't work, then we should go back and pivot it. Build, test, learn. That approach could really make us stronger in terms of exploration. So we have conventional project making and conventional planning. We should move a little bit away from that. So I'd like to add a thing to ambidextrous management. In insurance companies, there is one thing that we see. So there are financial management, there are policies and product management. All of these departments have different levels of rules, and this is what it should look like in the industry. In NM, for example, just like you mentioned, we had certain friends who improved and developed certain things. We did not want them to do another thing, so we had a separate team. We had them in a room and we said, hey, this is what we want to do and focus on that, we said to those friends of us. So for example, I see multinational companies doing this, and other companies also do that. So for example, a certain expenditure is calculated for a certain development, and that expense will be covered. But we did not want to start that way. When we think of group financing, we don't want to worry about the financing at the moment because it could come at a loss in the very beginning. We said that we're going to start implementation after discovering what it looks like, how it works. So, in a nutshell, at the exploration stage, you really have to separate yourself from the financial side and from other things, and you need to really focus on whether the project at hand will work or not. Maybe that perspective should be integrated into the insurance industry. I guess we're nearing the end of our conversation. It's been really fun. Thank you so much, dear Hussein, for making the time to join us. Hopefully our viewers are of the same opinion. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank you, Erdem. Your comments and your quotes have been very, very fun, and I also have taken notes in my mind. Thank you so much for your invitation, and I'd like to also thank the viewers. Thank you. See you later.
Teşekkürler. Tekrar görüşmek üzere.